The subsection entitled Virus Transmission on a Network. If you suspect a virus on a computer that's on a network, the very first thing you do is you disconnect that device from the rest of the network. It's real easy if you've got lax security and you're not running internal firewalls on your boxes for a virus to replicate within your network. So the very first thing you want to do is unplug that device. Just unplug the network card, not the network card, take the cable out of the wall jack and then do your troubleshooting with that device offline. The thing that frustrates me the most is I'll get a call from somebody that says, you know, I've had a virus and I've been trying to clean it up for about the past 2 or 3 days and I'm not getting anywhere, and I know without even asking, and have you been connected to the network the whole time? And it's just not something that is apparent to people that you've got a risk here and you're putting everybody else in your servers and who knows what else at risk. So anyway, that's my soapbox for today there. Moving on, the next thing that they cover is hoaxes, and everybody has probably been the recipient of an email that says, this is legitimate, please pay attention to this. And they tell you about some purported virus that's going around, that what it does is it makes a change to this file, and sure enough, if you go in and look here and here and here, you'll see some file and you need to go delete it. Well, usually those are legitimate files. The whole thing is a hoax, but what it's gotten you to do is delete some sort of an important system file. And even people that should know better end up forwarding these things. It's really pretty frustrating. There are different websites you can go to check to see if something is a hoax. And I should have looked that up before I got here. There are places you can go and pretty much when you get one of those emails, take a line out of it, do a search on it, you will almost certainly find reference to a hoax that has that particular syntax in there. Moving out of viruses and hoaxes, we do have a few different other types of malicious code. A Trojan horse refers back to, you know, the Trojan War, where you had that big hollow horse and they brought it into the city, and then at night the bad guys got out of the horse and slaughtered everybody in there, and fortunately everybody thought, oh, this is just, the horse is great, it's a nice gift. So what a Trojan does is it looks like a legitimate program, but it's not. And most of the times you can't tell from the name or from the description if this is legitimate or not. So you're kind of stuck. The best course of action is don't install anything unless you are deliberately doing it. Very often you'll install some software and it might throw in 3 or 4 different things, and if you go look in add remove programs, you might have 60 things listed there, but you've actually only intentionally installed about 15 or 20 of them. This is a pretty common thing. Moving on, a logic bomb is just a piece of bad code that executes under certain conditions. Going back to that John Lennon one, whatever the name of that one was, it was triggered by a certain date. I think it was December 12th, 1980, I think is when he was shot. Other times it could be triggered by a certain level of CPU activity. It could be triggered by a certain amount of disk space. There's all sorts of different things that could trigger it, and it just is up to the imagination of whoever the coder is on that. A worm, a lot of people call this a virus, but a worm is technically something different. What it does is that it reproduces itself. As the book correctly states, a lot of things that were labeled as a virus were actually worms and not viruses. Again, the deal is that a worm is just going to self-replicate and continue to spread itself out. There is a tech note that talked about the Melissa virus, which again was a worm. It says it spread itself to more than 100,000 users in a short period of time. This was a tremendous issue for all sorts of installations, because at that time antivirus software was not as common as you'll find today. One of the things that I'm going to have you do is look at the cost to a business of downtime from a virus. A lot of this is documented, and it's really pretty astounding the dollar hit the businesses are going to take, because they've got a loss in productivity, and then they've got extra costs to go in and repair the virus or clean it and then update their antivirus software. A lot of these really have a pretty big price tag associated with it. The last couple sections of this chapter involve social engineering and kind of an introduction to auditing. Social engineering just uses people exploiting either their trusting nature or exploiting procedures and policies to get information or to get access. They've got a really good example here in the book. Your help desk gets a call at 4 o'clock from someone who says he's the vice president. She tells the help desk personnel she's out of town, her computer failed, she's sitting at Kinko's trying to get a file from her desktop back at the office. She can't remember her password. All this can sound pretty legitimate, especially if it's supposed to be a vice president. You want to make a good impression, and so very often people will say, yes, just let me reset that. That's an example of social engineering because you have no idea who this person is. They're probably not at a Kinko's. They're probably sitting on their couch with, I don't know, a bowl of popcorn and their feet up, and they're sitting in their jammies, and now they're just trying to exploit something. What I'm finding is that people are extremely security conscious these days, especially in terms of help desks. I call on behalf of all sorts of clients, and generally I'm not on the approved user list. So I start the call, I explain the problem, and then it's standard practice for them to talk to the authorized person who has specific security codes or whatever. It gives me clearance, and then I get the phone back and continue with the support call. Almost any vendor that I call these days, that's the procedure that I go through. But that's something that is decided from site to site. At times I'm surprised that just by giving my name and explaining what the issue is that I want to do, a lot of times the person thinks I'm legitimate and just goes ahead and does it. I guess if I had a more mercenary nature or something, I could really do a lot of damage. The very last page of information deals with auditing, and this is kind of an interesting place to put this. What a lot of people do is once they've had some sort of a security breach is they say, well, gee, we're going to have to turn on auditing and make sure this doesn't happen again. That kind of a scattered and non-methodical approach is probably not going to work too well for you. If you just enable auditing, you're going to have tons of information to wade through. It's going to be overwhelming pretty quickly. You need, I guess, a little more thought and a systematic approach to doing this. You need to think about what it is that you want to prevent, what things would be good information for you to look at, and then realistically, how are you going to actually wade through all this stuff? How are you going to be notified of some sort of a fault or a failure event? You know, and a whole nother aspect of this is that depending on the type of attack, a lot of times your audit logs can be erased. It's not too hard to go turn off the event viewer service and delete all the event logs so that when you come back in after you've noticed a breach, you've got nothing. You don't even have any of your historical data. It's kind of like somebody standing there going nanny nanny boo boo. By the time you see this, you know somebody has deliberately gone in and messed up your network. Well, that pretty much wraps up this chapter. And again, the focus on here is identifying the different types of risks that you can have. Those can come into place with attacks. They can come into place with exploitation of TCP/IP and the 4 layers under which it operates. You can have code that is malicious and can do bad things. And then you can also have people who can not use anything more high-tech than just a good believable story and good timing, and then they can get in and mess around with your system. That's pretty much the point of this particular chapter. I've got assignments for you to do. Again, go back and look at the test questions. For each answer, make sure that you can at least reasonably explain why something is right, why something is wrong. The focus on all of this at this point is making sure that you define terms. Once you finish that up, you can take a little break and then we'll move on to chapter 3.